So my conclusion, can you do speed in Speed 1 or Speed 4? Yes. Is there really any performance difference? Well, no, not really. Everybody hoping to do okay. Welcome to Portugal. I've got a session today of 12 by 400, so I've got a good opportunity to test out the Endorphin Speed 4 versus the Endorphin Speed 1. Now, a lot of people say that the Endorphin Speed 1 was like a real speedy shoe, and ever since, like the Speed 4 and the Speed 3 become a bit dumbed down. Well, I put one on each foot and just a little warm up, and I can't really tell much of a difference, to be honest. I think the 4 is just slightly more spongy, and although it's actually got a wider base, which I'll show you in a minute, is actually like, if you look at the tongues there, I've actually got the tongues closer on the Speed 1 than the 4. I'll just do a comparison there of the width. You can see that the Speed 1 on the top is just slightly narrower, although I can't really feel it too much, to be honest. And they have sort of said since the original Speed 1 that they've kind of made a bit more structure to it, and you can definitely see at the back there a lot more structure to it now than it used to be. And if you look at a side-on view there, you can kind of see that, yeah, the broadly it's the same, but just a little more sort of structure now at the back here. Although it's still got like what appears to be like two foams stuck together, but I'm not entirely sure that is actually the case. I mean, there, it just so it looks like almost like a 3 density foam in the Speed 1, doesn't it? And then in the Speed 4, you've got this orange bit there and then the white bit. I mean, is that actually any difference? I never thought there was actually any difference there. But it does seem like at the front, there may be just slightly more feeling under your toes there than there was before, although this pair has obviously done a fair amount of miles. I'll try the first few in the one of each as I've got on now, and I'll swap over to just the Speed 4s, then I'll swap over to just the Speed 1s and see if there's any difference between all 3 of those combinations. So if you see here, I've got a very convenient sort of like resting place for my other shoes, these old shopping trolleys. There's a supermarket, I think, over there, so how they've landed up here, not sure. And we've got this very convenient little blue cycle track, which is, I think, is more or less exactly 200 meters along. So I think basically I need to run along this and extend it about this way. It sort of goes into more of a trail this way with a little bit of a ramp start. So maybe I'll start up the hill there slightly, do the blue bit, and then run on to what my watch bleeps 400, and then hopefully that would be a good test. And hopefully nobody nicks these trolleys while I'm doing my shoe testing. And a bit of a railway interlude. We've got the train line from Olio in that direction towards Faro in that direction. It's about a 10-minute train ride, which I've been on a few times. But yeah, there's not much sort of security here on the railways. It's just a normal sort of level crossing where you just have to take your chances, and there's no sort of lights or anything. Okay, first of all, I get a bit of stride in. I'm putting the GoPro here on something that's nearly as tall as me. Okay, it's a bit windy today, so the odd ones going that way will feel rather easy, and the even ones going that way will feel somewhat harder. And I think looking at the terrain here, it's very, very slightly uphill going that way. If you look there, it's always a bit deceptive, isn't it? Because you're by the railway here. And if you look that way, well, you've got that little ramp up at the end as well. So I'm making my excuses early as usual. First 2 done in the Speed 4 on the left, Speed 1 on the right. And the main problem is more the wind than the shoes. After a while, you're kind of thinking, I can't remember which one's which, to be honest. There's a bit more sponge, I think, in the Speed 4, which is just a bit newer, about 100 miles, coach about 250 on the other one. But other than that, really hard to tell the difference. It'll be interesting when I move to going just on one shoe, see if it's any different. Right, let's do another set in one of each, and then we'll put the Speed 4s on and then do Speed 1s for the last 4. Okay, so now we're into the Speed 4s on both shoes, see if there's any different. I think just slightly softer feeling in the Speed 4s, but I think, as I said, there's a bit more sort of squishiness to it generally, I think, but also the fact that they are a relatively newer shoe, as I said, so I'm not sure I can read too much into this. Anyways, this is a hard session. Perhaps I could do with extra rest. So, yeah, I was meant to be a minute rest on each one, but we're doing with 3 sets of 4x400. Okay, first 2 done in just the Speed 4s. That one back into the wind, really does feel it. I think it was about 79 going out, 87 going back. I thought it was down on my feet at the end. Yeah, the shoes just marginally softer perhaps in the Speed 4s. But it's not really done in my speed as such, is it? I mean, 79, I wasn't even doing that if you don't meet a race the other day, which says a lot. Right, 20 seconds, we're off again. We're going to get this done. Okay, Speed 1's on. I think they were slightly harder to get on, so maybe I have pulled in a bit tighter than the other ones. So they are tongues that are more touching, but let's see how we go. Don't feel quite as bouncy as the other ones, but not much in it. We've got 4 to go here. And one session I'll be glad to get over and done with, actually. Whatever shoes I'm wearing. See if we can get 79 for the first one with the wind behind. Okay, 2 done in the Speed 1. I can barely speak, it's so dry. Just the last hat back to go. It's about an 80 going out. And then look at the watch coming back. But you really just suffer on the last bit, went straight into the wind. Anyway, only one more out and back to go. Thank goodness. Speed ones, just slightly firmer, I'd say. Slightly tighter, I think I've got them as well. But other than that, the performance differences are pretty much negligible, I'd say. Right, off we go. Okay, all done. So my conclusion, can you do speed in Speed 1 or Speed 4? Yes. Is there really any performance difference? Well, no, not really. I couldn't really tell you the difference really. Speed 4 maybe just slightly softer, but my pair are just a bit newer. 100 miles on the Speed 4, about 250 on the Speed 1. Speed 1 just fractionally narrower, but I couldn't really tell much on the difference on the foot, to be honest. So have you got the Speed 1 or the Speed 4 or the Speed 2 or the Speed 3? Which is your favourite? Now, in the light of this video, will you revisit all your speeds and say, well, actually, yeah, maybe it's deja vu with the Speed 1 and Speed 2, and they're really no better than the Speed 3 and Speed 4 for speed, and it's all just subtle differences, which I think it is, to be honest. Right, hope you found this interesting. Like and subscribe on that, and see you next one then. Bye. Let's have a look at some data then.
My customary spreadsheet. So basically I broke this down into 3 sets of 4x400 where I did an out and a back. So odd numbers was with the tailwind and the ones coming back obviously with a headwind. Quite a significant difference actually. If you look here, it's about a 10 mile an hour to 40 mile an hour wind depending on whether you looked at Strava or Garmin. Temperatures are quite nice, pleasant, warm. Portugal 22 to 24 degrees. It felt quite warm towards the end. And you can see here that basically on the way out was about sort of 8-9 seconds quicker each way. I think the biggest takeaway here is there's a very little difference between any of these 3 sets. So even on the first set where I was wearing a Speed 4 on my left foot and a Speed 1 on my right foot, the times are very similar to what they were in the Speed 4 and the Speed 1. I think obviously my heart rate got higher as I went along because obviously this is quite a hard session, and I peaked there maximum heart rate of 153, whereas after the first rep I was only at 136. And if you look at some of the other stats here, so there's 79.1 and 79.0 and then 80.3. So each time the first run on each of the sets was the quickest, as you might expect, and I was sort of hanging on there. I think I just sort of dropped about 2 seconds on the second one each time, very, very similar. Then coming back, bit of a struggle actually, because it was quite a heavy tailwind. I think they also fighting a lactate because you only had a minute rest between each of the reps, and I had about 3 minutes to change shoes. Some of the other metrics here, it's interesting on the power because you've got the Garmin power with the wind adjustment, so it does look a bit odd. So in fact the slowest times here at the end had a much higher power than similar times early on. So it's a bit variable, this power, isn't it? But you can kind of see that it's sort of like how it works, because going into the wind, although I was running slow, it had more power, but I don't think realistically I was actually trying any harder. See these heart rates here just basically just going up, as you might expect with heart rate drift over a session like this where the heart rate is just going up and up and up. Some of the other metrics, interesting, ground time, contact time balance is normally I'm sort of over to the left. There was this time, more anything, I was more over to the right, or pretty evenly balanced. So that was quite encouraging actually. It shows I've got any major issues on that front at the moment. Cadence about at 186 to 188, maybe just sort of crept up a bit higher on the last one. I think I've noticed that before. When I'm getting tired, I tend to increase my cadence slightly. Maybe there's something to read into that. And some of these other metrics like vertical oscillation, pretty similar. In fact, on the last set there was all 8.7, and maybe just slightly lower vertical oscillation on the first one. Maybe I was just sort of like striding out a bit better, and just form was a bit better. Ground contact time, as you might expect, going faster, was just slightly lower. So it's all pretty as you might expect. It's interesting with the elevation as well. I mean, this is basically a flat course, I think, for argument's sake, but I did notice here that on the way back into the headwind, it seems to be more uphill than it suggested the other way. But I think those stats largely indicate this is pretty flat. Maybe just very, very slightly downhill with the tailwind and very, very slightly uphill on the headwind. So I had a double whammy there effect. That's why these times I think were so different. But yeah, I think the acid test here for me is that the Speed 4 and the Speed 1, yes, you can use them for sessions, and contrary to popular belief about the Speed 1, it wasn't some magic shoe that's now been dumbed down in the 4. And you can certainly run exactly the same paces in both shoes, even to the point of having one on each foot, and it's still pretty much the same. So what do you think of these findings? Do you agree that the Speed 4 is actually really as good as the Speed 1 in this sort of speed sense? I think there's a lot of feeling that, you know, some shoes that came out 4 years ago were quite sort of, with the Pebax foams, were quite sort of novel at the time. And, you know, now they're perhaps a more commonplace in the sense of deja vu. I mean, there was the Clifton one, which I never had. People seem to rave about that, and they re-released it. And I remember the sort of feeling that, oh, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought. So maybe there's an element there of that as well. But certainly both good shoes. And I've been wearing the Speed 4 every day in Portugal so far for not only this session, but sort of like plods around Faro and stuff. So very versatile shoe for sure. I think actually it feels better when it's warmer. I think sometimes when it gets a bit cold, I can feel the plate a bit more. But I think when it gets warmer, it seems to maybe just soften up slightly. So it's quite a nice conditions for that. Anyway, so I hope you found this interesting. Like and subscribe to that, and see you next one then. Bye.
And these are sort of the sort pans come sewage, I think. So you can run little loops around here. There's a few segments I used to go for, but I think the prep's beyond me a bit now, so just settled for doing the sessions. And that was back to where we came on that bridge, and then Olio and Armona is off in that direction. Train to Faro.